Hello, everyone. I thought it would be easier if I showed you through a screencastify the reporting for Fastbridge. So bear with us. We have another screencast, but I think it'll be easier for you to use this as a reference to go back, to be able to monitor your students more closely, and then also to be able to still ask me questions or things that once you have the things we're going to talk about today mastered, we can cover in our next segment or move forward and what we're going to be doing within the classroom for these students. So I am currently in a training section, and I just picked a training teacher. So if you go back to our overview that we created, this right here is where you can go if you just want to play around in the training field, but you guys all have your own data. So I think it would be better if you just logged in as yourself. Just make sure to follow these steps, and you have to log in through Clever in order to access your own scores. If you do not log in through Clever, then nothing shows up. You just end up on a Fastbridge screen that's blank. So you guys have all taken your tests. This is what your main screen, your home screen looks like. All of you have to-do lists that are probably some are in red. This screener just shows the things that this team did already to show you what you can or have done and accomplished. Training and resources is awesome. If you go down to FastFlix, you can navigate through these, and all of this activities, these are for group work. We're not going to go through all of these, but if you click on the video and you start these videos, they are actually incredibly helpful when navigating through Fastbridge. So you just click on FastFlix. I ended up doing the reading assessment, the math assessment, and then came up here and did the screening to intervention instruction plans. So these all, if you're looking for further information or you're looking to become certified, the FastFlix will actually certify you in Fastbridge, which is nice. Definitely will make you feel more comfortable with what you're doing. But we're going to do the Cliff Notes version for today. So back to teacher. Here is your knowledge base. If you click on this, you're not sure about something, you want to know how to read a report, you want to understand a score, you can click what you're looking for. So if I type in growth report, I can get the group growth report data, I can get the instructions for manager use, I can get the instructions for by class use. I click onto these things and it gives us an overview of what you're looking at for each of the categories. I can use this for a lot of different resources. So please make sure if you are getting stuck that you are looking back here and just typing in your keywords, and it'll help you understand what scores mean, what they're looking for with benchmarks, things like that. So most of you probably click into your class list after the tests are done. And the class list will show every test that you have screened, and then the screeners that are used, and also then the progress monitoring if you've done that. So you have your A reading category, and then the CMB reading English is the screener. Auto reading, comp, efficiency, those are the progress monitoring pieces that are done for each student. So then some things that you can do here is you can alphabetize by student name, and also you can click in to see their scores in order. So there's lots of hidden little arrows in each of these categories that you can more easily view the data that you're looking for. So you can start here, and that lists the students' high scores, or down here. So also you'll see with this teacher, they also did the A math and have all of their math scores and the CMB math automaticity, which is the screener. and then the intervention pieces next to it. So this again is the A math. You can click on that to align the scores if you choose to. So again, we'll go back and then you can change it to your winter scores. You can change it to your fall scores in your own class. It'll show all three. The training does not allow that though. So yeah, like they just have the spring data to show us. So then go back to the teacher page again. What you want to be looking at first is your reporting tab. So you're going to go to your reporting tab and you get all of these screens, which is a little overwhelming. So let's break down what these screens mean, okay? So first of all is your group screening. And keep in mind that there's keywords in these titles that tell you exactly what they're looking for. The group screening is just the A math, just the A reading. That's what you're going to look for here. And let me see this again. I did the A reading. Generate the report. Now, look at the title of what you have here. Now remember, on yours, because you've done the 3 periods of testing, you're going to see all your data. This is just the training. Here are the scores of students in groups by normative categories. And remember, we defined normative categories here as how are they doing in comparison to other peers. So that's what the normative score is. How are they doing in comparison to their classmates? If you want, so let's just stay in this report actually for a minute. So the tier 1 report use, this serves 100% of students with the goal of having 80% or higher exceed the low risk benchmark. So if 80% or higher of your students do not have a 1 or 2 exclamation points, then your tier 1, your basic, what you do every day in class instruction is working for your students. But you can see here that we have at least one student. You obviously will have more in your group of students who are not achieving. And then it talks about tier 2. Tier 2 is hopefully only 20% of your students, which serves 30% of students with evidence-based interventions supplemental to core 1, okay? So it's the bottom 30, right? But you want it to be 20% or less of your entire class, if that makes sense. So here, we obviously already can see that we have a student with 2 arrows. That's a very low risk. So if we go down to our percentiles, we have high risk, some risk, then they're blank if they're on track, or we have college pathway. Also, you can see the percentile rankings. This is in combination with national ranks. Down here at the bottom, for either the A reading or the A math, there's the group average, median, standard deviation, the group minimum, and the group maximum, which actually is really nice to see when you have your own data because it shows the scores for all 3 tests that you give straight across. So it's a real easy way to see the group data as a whole for the entire year. So make sure that when you're exploring your group screening report that you take a look down at the bottom and check out that chart that's at the bottom there. Now you can, here, we're going to arrange by the scores. And obviously this is the trainer. They don't have a ton of scores in there for us, but we have one kiddo that's at high risk, high risk, one that's on track, and 2 that are college bound. This is going to be pretty similar to the range that you see in your own classroom, except obviously we would have more just on track, more here. This is just for screening. This is just for you to get a temperature of where your students are at. When I was looking at these, the things that I thought would be super helpful is if you took your scores and arranged them from lowest to highest, because I think one of the things that we want in our PLCs, especially next year when things are even keeled and we're a little bit more back to normal, is you want to be able to take your tests or give a screening afterwards, and then do some progress monitoring, but still be able to just pull names really quickly. And why are these kids scoring so low, to be able to bring these names to your group to work with your peers on planning for interventions for these lower kids. You can also do the same for the kids that are college track. We often have the conversation, what are we doing with the kids that are exceeding expectations? This is a really good way to get a handle on specifically who those students are. One thing to keep in mind with the way the tests for A read and A math read, it's a computer adaptive test. So there is not going to be a key of what the kids answered. It's not because as the kids respond, the computer raises or lowers the difficulty of each question. So each kid is actually taking a different test based off of how they scored before. So we really just have to keep in mind that these are really holistic. I am going to dial down and show you some places where you can get those for A read at level score, some things like that. But this is really a holistic look. This is taking the screening and then moving forward with the next steps for the kids that are in the high risk and some risk categories. Okay, so again, those are these kiddos here. And then what can we plan for the kids who are college pathway, and then keeping tier 1 instruction sound so that our kids who are on track stay on track for the year at least. So again, this is just for screening. If I go back to reporting, and I go back to my screening page and I go down to A math, I can generate the report again. And it looks similar. It's the same, again, with the groups down at the bottom. So math and reading are the same there. So then we'll go to group growth. I'll start with A reading because it has a little extra there. So here we have our group median. They didn't do a very good job here of showing us data, but just really quickly, your group growth report for A reading shows their growth over time. You can change from norms to benchmarks again. And remember, if you're looking at, let's review that. If you're looking at benchmark score, it's how well did the student meet their goal and how are we teaching them? Okay, so that's going to look at how strong is core instruction. Are kids meeting what they should be meeting in their grade level? And then the normative scores are how are they doing in comparison to their peers? So here, goals for all students, effective services, ensure that all students progress toward well-defined end-of-year learning goals, compares the predicted with the end-of-year goal and benchmark. And then, did the group improve? These are things that you can bring, and the questions are already there for your PLC to go over. Did the group improve overall? We do have manager reports. I am able to see, I'm not sure if you all are overall how the grade level is doing in the school. So that's something that we can explore also if we want that whole grade level data at some point. So I'll go back to reporting. I'm going to save individual score report actually. I'm going to go down to screening to intervention. And again, when I'm showing A reading scores, the A math is very similar. So just keep that in mind. Here, once you've done your screening and you want to know what do I do with these kids, this is where you get all that information from Fastbridge. So you have this area, word segmenting, kids that are below the 80% cut, and here the A reading overall. So down below, first of all, our next steps are whole group recommendation is determined by the needs of most of the students in the class. Examine whole group recommended plan and interventions to adjust whole group instruction, and review plans for individual students to inform small group and individual instruction. Okay, so this is where you have to do some clicking to understand what's happening. So again, this is the whole group instruction. So you've done your screening, You've checked your scores. You can easily manipulate the data from lowest to highest or highest to lowest in the screening portion. And now you want to know what you're supposed to do with these kiddos. So down here, again, we have our little hidden arrows. Okay. And we'll just go back to being in alphabetical order. This is where we want to go. So under plan, we're going to add here with the arrow. Okay. So you can scroll down. These are all links to what should be done with your students. Okay. So this plan are things that whole group the computer is recommending that you do with students. So vocabulary and comprehension always, right? This kiddo is also low or some risk and high risk. So the first thing that you have to do if you want to use Fastbridge to help you assess and keep track of where these students are at, we did implement this a little bit with sixth grade, not last year, but the year before, and used this. It's a little time consuming. However, it's not impossible if you just picked a few students to try to do this on a weekly basis with. Start small, grab a couple kids that maybe, stay for 8th hour, and you could pull them into your classroom during that intervention hour if you're still in the building. You can at least practice doing the recommended assessment. So let's talk about how that would work. Once you've done the screener, you are gonna remember, let's go back again. On next to plan, we have all of these pop-ups that happen. When you scroll down, and you will have more information because your data for your students will be more comprehensive than what's here for the training. This student, David Schnacke, the recommended assessment that they want that student to take is I'm going to write this down, the CBM reading and the CBM comp. These are the screeners to dig a little deeper to see what these students need to do. And this will be the progress monitoring that the student will take on a weekly basis. This is the intervention that, based off of their initial screening, that Fastbridge recommends. So you're going to click on that. We'll do generating inferences and summaries. Oh, now this isn't working. Well, when I'm actually in a teacher's thing, those send you to the right thing. But here we go. This is small group planning for students that need to have some of the interventions implemented. Okay, so you get your whole plan here. It talks about what's available and goes through. You just have to read it and see, because each plan is a little bit different. This is how you get started with your small group. What are my student skills now? The FAST data suggests that many of your student skills are similar to these in meaning. So these are where you need to kind of take a look at your ideas and what the data is telling you. Now, if you go there we go. If you go back to this and we go to progress monitoring, there's no data groups. Here, let me go back one step, make it back into that student data, screening to intervention. I'll do the math this time. We'll generate the report. Down here, click here. Here is the basic facts. This is the tests that we want to look at for these students. So now we're going to go to progress monitoring. No, screening. Sorry, we're going to screening. And we are going to, the first test that I had written down before was the CMB reading. And none of these students took this test. So they have an opportunity to take this test when you click here, or you can open up the assessment for those students. And it starts off. This one is the one that the student reads to you. You have to make sure that you are preparing this test correctly. So the CMB reading tests are actually done one-on-one for the initial screening. Get out of that. There we go. So right now, guys, since we're so close to the end of the school year, my suggestion to you is just to get familiar with the 3 reports that we talked about. So if I go back to reporting, the group screening report, the group growth report, and screening to intervention. Now, one thing I do want to show you in both of these tests that I forgot to show you previously is that when you go down here, you can change the reading program. This is the estimated Lextile. Some of you are wondering where you could get a grade level estimate. This is the drop-down menu. So if you go to screening to intervention and you click down to spring estimated grade level, it'll give you your student data in that form. Or you can look at it as a Lexile level. Some schools use DRA or Basel. Fontes and Pinnell is what our elementary uses, so that's nice for them. But just remember that these are just estimates, and that you have to look at it as my student in 6th grade is performing as well as a 1st grader here. It does not necessarily mean that they're just at a 1st grade level. There's other skills that they can produce. So just be careful when you're interpreting that data, that's you're actually looking at it correctly. Now, if I go to screening to intervention for math and generate the report, and I go down, I don't get all that nice stuff. However, you go to the plan for the whole group. You can do this for the reading also. How to keep everyone on track. There's all sorts of information here on what to do with students. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to interpret the scores. Some of you had stated that you don't know how to read the scores once you have the screeners. They are, like I told you, they're a computer adaptive test. So you're not going to get, Lucy scored or chose B and the answer was C. It's not, because it moves up and down on that difficulty scale as students are working. So when you are using the screeners, keep in mind that each of them chunks it by 50 points. So if I open this up, this is the A Reading Score Interpretation Guide, which I've offered that link there. You just have to scroll to the bottom and download it. You choose your student score and where they fall between, maybe it's 350 and 400. These are the things they can do. This is the instructional recommendations. So there's a whole booklet of what to do with students if they fall within a certain range. And because most students, you'll be able to group them into just a few of these categories, even though the pamphlet is actually really dense, you won't have to scroll through all of it for each student. You would, again, group your data, find out where their scores are, and then determine by looking through the score interpretation what that means. All of the interpretations follow foundational skills for reading, informational language, and reading literature. They follow those 4 categories and give you, so look at the main skill category and then scroll across. So if whatever you're looking for those students, there's more information on how to teach those students to understand those concepts. Math has the same thing. So you can do by the score, counting, geometry, measurement, number and operation, operational operations, and algebraic thinking. And then it's as these scores go through, the categories obviously will increase with what they are able to do, but then also what they should be moving to do. And this will help you better understand where the test deems that the student has skill strengths and where you need to be instructing further. I think this will be really also impactful when you're looking at student scores in comparison to the kids that aren't doing their homework. Are they falling into these lower ranges? Is there a reason they can't do their homework? Do they really not understand certain basic concepts? And obviously, these can be pushed into bell work, small group work, things like that. Hopefully, eventually, we're into the point where we're using the progress monitoring for Fastbridge. But if right now you use the screener, group those students by ability, be able to find your students who are some or high risk, and then some who are on the other range, and then use the interpretation guides to start to understand what that data is telling you, then we will have a really strong foothold in this for next year to move forward. I am going to end this with just a short little questionnaire. So please be looking for that in Schoology. Thank you very much, guys.